This is an ultimate global podcast. Hello, and welcome to our Daily Dose podcast, covering all about day-to-day global affairs. You're listening to Saurabh Kora and George Mavros from Sydney.
Good evening to everyone who is joining us from Sydney and around the world. Now, this Tuesday's discussion is primarily, revolving around this fact of what happened last week that affected the entire world. And we all know about the social media crash, which affected all the platforms, including Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp. And it actually told us how these platforms have now become the next oxygen of this 21st century. And for to discuss about this topic, we have got Shubham again with us, who is the brand ambassador of UGP. Initial comments on that, Shubham, and it was also on your birthday when you got off on your birthday. There was no internet. There was no social media. So you stopped receiving any birthday wishes for 2 hours. How did it feel to you?
Oh no, I was really sad. Like, where are my friends wishing me on my birthday? But definitely, all jokes apart, it was definitely a very weird thing. I was trying to connect with my parents, and I couldn't do that, and they were trying to connect with me. So luckily, there were SMSs which were still working, and we are glad that we are still in the generation that uses SMSs as a medium of communication. So that was still there, and it was good. We could call them, but when it comes to social media, it is a very powerful tool when it's connecting to people across the world, right? And everywhere it was down. So I can only imagine what went through the lives of people who hadn't talked to people for a long time, or the ones who relied on it for their own businesses as well. It must have hugely impacted them.
And you must have also looked at these numbers that 2.75 billion people were affected at that time. And the company was also fined with, this company was also fined with a lot of $1 billion last month. Last month also, there was a fine of 225 million euros that was charged over WhatsApp data failings in Europe. And due to this breach or this crash, there was a loss of $7 billion itself to the founder of Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg.
Yes, to the co-founder, I would say,
Yeah.
because there's so many of them. But then again, we only highlight the one who became the face of it, to be honest. But that being said, yes, that did affect that number of $6 to $8 billion that fell from his net worth. But again, that is just a number. When you're playing in hundreds of billions of dollars, that isn't much that you can look at. But overall, if you look at the impact that it created, that is what makes the difference. Like you said, there were 2.7 billion people who were affected by it. That's a huge number. That's one third of the world's population, sort of, that was affected and was using either one of the platforms, Facebook, Instagram, or WhatsApp, which the giant is owning. And
Absolutely.
I think that's one number now we need to worry about as well. Like, that monopoly that has been created to some extent by a giant like Facebook, how does that impact when things like this happen? This is one instance of a world outage. Now, what if an outage like this prolongs for a longer time than 6 hours? What happens then? Does it affect the people just right then? Or would it be affecting them in the long run as well? There were impacts on small businesses mainly who had seen within a period of 6 months, like within a time frame of 6 hours, that their revenue fell down, their followers decreased, or they weren't getting engagement, and that creates a kind of a tension and a pressure on them as well. I think that because that is one way for them to survive. No, like, I'm sure, like, even you must have received a lot of messages about this in UGP saying that, okay, sorry, what is happening? I can't do this. So what was your first thought behind that? What was the third, like, what was, how did you react to it?
So first of all, I could not believe that I cannot find Facebook and Instagram, and there were server errors, because initially I thought that probably it is not the not a true news, and it is probably a kind of a rumor being spread by few people. But later on, then when we saw that nothing was working, and we actually checked on Twitter that officially Facebook was down for 7 hours on that day, and that really made us realize the importance of this. But on the other side, there were comments on Twitter which said that we are feeling more relaxed and happy without Facebook and WhatsApp. So kind of also tells us the other side of the coin when we are always traumatized by these platforms all the time, and we are just surrounded by Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp. But again, this is also a platform for a lot of businesses, including UGP. A lot of businesses who are running their entire business model runs through Instagram or Facebook or WhatsApp, and I can imagine what would have happened to those people. Even if 1 hour of business goes down, it really impacts those businesses because they rely so much on the social media platform. But the bigger thing here is to also discuss about why did it really happen, right? And what are the risks associated with this crash? Now, one of the things which has come out of it is a lot of the times European countries have also blamed that Facebook is directly controlling a lot of applications, because of which the entire social media spectrum is coming under a very limited set of players, business players, and that's what is making it more difficult for them to, if there is one server error in one of those platforms, it affects the entire spectrum. And
Hmm.
if they are independent to each other, it could have been better on Instagram and WhatsApp. Instead, we could have kept on using Instagram and WhatsApp at the same time.
Of course, I mean, when you centralize things, there's obviously a chance that if a major set of nerves are failing, of course, that entire body is going to fail at some point, right? And that's the reason when you decentralize these things, it makes a difference in that. Tells you, okay, when the independent body is running it. When it comes to servers, Saurabh, it's very hard to comment how many servers they use because it's huge, right? And again, like you said, relying on just one particular body of framework, it becomes difficult to analyze and see whether it is being taken care of properly and in a way that it mitigates those risks at the same time. What do you think about that?
Yeah, so that's what I was telling you, that once it comes under one particular
Hmm.
umbrella, everything is coming under that umbrella. It is good from a business point of view. We all know that it really can
Of course,
affect
it's
your
like I
network.
said, like yeah, it's
That's what
creating a
happens.
monopoly out there.
I think that's why they took this decision, so that everyone can come together, and each one's users or networks can benefit each other in the long run. But from a realistic point of view, if one of those really fails, and we have seen this happening a couple of times in the last 2 years, I was reading a report which suggests that this is not the first time, but it is like for third or fourth time, which is happening in the last 1 to 2 years, that the server either crashed on one of these platforms, because of which it
Hmm.
impacts the user's life at that point of time, isn't it? Just imagine your life one day without WhatsApp these days, because if even if you're sitting in any part of the world, these platforms have become so common for you to just give a call to another person sitting in another country free of cost.
Yeah, I think the part where you say free of cost plays a really important role, right? For a country like Australia, where we are sitting right now, for us, the amount we pay for a telecom, the calls are free to almost half of the countries in the world right now. But right, if you go to New Zealand, they aren't. So I know people from New Zealand who use WhatsApp as a medium for communication, for the parents just to even call them to save on that money. So, like you said, that free really plays a very important role. But now, again, when we are talking about all this sort of, we need to understand why, like you were talking about the monopoly and the services they're offering, right? At the end of the day, it's all business. And the way they've integrated all of them, Facebook, WhatsApp, Instagram, they have been integrated in such a way that one gives business to the other. Like if you go back probably 4 months in time, you would remember what a outrage WhatsApp new laws had caused, right? That they would be taking or gathering information about the links that we are sharing and things like that. And there was so much misinformation around that, or there was so much unclear information even around that, for people to understand, okay, is it actually what is happening, or is it not what is actually happening? And if this is happening, what do we do about it? So the bigger a company becomes, the more are these problems that they need to look at. But again, what impact will it have on the society? It's of major concern. The number of people who are using Facebook, who are using Instagram, WhatsApp, it's growing every day. Businesses, small or big, are relying on these platforms nowadays to get more revenue out of it. And when they are affected, it's not just the monetary aspect which is being affected, they are being affected mentally as well, because it is kind of a risk for them. But
Absolutely. And
yes.
that's what, we have been talking about, that how can we overcome, this kind of a situation in the future. The Facebook employees and a lot of people from Facebook were also saying that they need to now think about making their infrastructure more resilient. And in fact, they want to now dig deeper into this problem and understand why this happened exactly. What they are saying is that it was a routine maintenance job which was on that day, because of which there was a disruption in their routine maintenance job,
Hmm.
and they had issued a command which had unintentionally disconnected the data centers from the internet. That's what it says. And that's something which their technical team and also different teams can look at, around the world. A lot of systems are working, and how one mistake can cost you so much of loss in terms of revenue, in terms of customer trust. There were a lot of customers who were angry and frustrated with what's happening. In Australia, it was still late at night, and when we got up at around
Hmm.
9, it was back. But imagine of countries where it was daytime, including United States, Canada, and I think they were in their business hours during Monday, at the time when they lost Instagram and Facebook connection. So there was a huge amount of frustration. So I think that also impacts the brand name, and it's more than your revenue, because brand name is more of an intangible component, but still is a very important part to really generate the revenue or cash flows in the long run.
For sure, Saurabh, when you're talking about brand name and things like revenue in this aspect with Facebook, they have been in the market for more than about what, 15 years, right?
Mhm. Yep.
In fact, 17 years. This one in 2004, 17 years. They've been in the market for 17 years. They've built that brand name over the years. And probably, if you look at it, this might be in the news for now for a little bit longer, probably 2 months. After that, people are going to forget about it, right? No one's going to remember that, okay, 5 months ago, I had an outage where I faced a revenue loss of $5,000 or $6,000. They're going to look at what they've made after that. And that is because of the monopoly that they've created. There aren't any competitors where people can even think about moving to create another source of revenue, what they're creating over here. So, how does one tackle that? Because any other platform which would even think about coming up would be either acquired by some of the major players, whether it's Facebook or Twitter or even Google for that matter, right? So what is left? Like, how do the consumers or how even the ones who are relying on these platforms make their decision about loyalty or for that brand? Like, they do not have an option to move to another brand to even think about the choice of loyalty they want to go for.
Yeah, like, because Facebook has been doing a great job in the last few years. If you see those small improvement that Facebook has made, in terms of, now you have different kind of stories popping up at the top of your screen, One of the best features I loved last year they introduced was these meeting rooms. During the pandemic, they introduced something called as rooms. So you can create your own rooms with your friends and then invite your friends there. It it kind of mimicked a lot of other platforms. So Facebook is trying to do a lot of things on their own platform, and because of which they have made their brand name so much, so large that none of
Exactly.
the new players can even think of competing with them, isn't it?
Of course, like if you're launching an app, you would be thinking, okay, like something like this is already there on Facebook. Why would someone even want to move to my application? And before you can take 4 steps ahead, you start thinking 5 steps behind. So what can you do more? So even if you think about launching it, like, does it even make sense to do it? And even if you do, would you survive at the end of the day?
Mhm.
I think the survival is one major question that we need to look at today. We're talking about these because there are so many reports which are being published almost every year about Facebook and how it's been running for years and how it's being using data. When you talk about the different news feeds which are coming up onto your system, it uses algorithms, right? And all these algorithms, a lot of the employees and the whistleblowers from Facebook claim that it is targeted in such a way that it puts in front of you the content that will get more engagement. Whether it is correct or not correct, that is secondary. They look at more engagement because that's how your psychology works. You like something, you click on it, mate. You click on it and you click on it again. You'll share it. First, you like it and then you share if you like
Yep.
it. That's the thing, and that's how it works. It has been working for a long time without us even realizing. Like what we are seeing is based sometimes on our choices and a lot of times on the manipulated earning from what they've analyzed. And that's
Yep.
where these target marketing techniques also come into place. So again, when things like this happen and people are looking into a lot of things, a big question about ethics comes into place. Is it ethical? Is that data ethical? Is it algorithm ethical? So we
Yeah,
keep
but
on
I think
asking
this
those
has
questions. Yeah.
yeah, but I think this has also been in discussion in US courts where the Facebook co-founder Mark Zuckerberg has been answering those tough questions as to what happened with the Cambridge Analytica in 2016 and what
Hmm.
has been happening with different kinds of ways through which Facebook, Twitter, Instagram are trying to control political campaigns and different kind of campaigns around the world in a way that it favors a particular political party, or it can favor somebody through which Facebook is getting benefited or through which Twitter is getting benefited. So that's something has been a big question as to how you can define that independence. I think we talked about the independence of media houses few days back. So this is the independence of the social media platforms. How independent are these social media platforms? And it's a big question for us to answer as well, that is it only possible for a social media platform or a media house to become independent, or become successful once they have some sort of partnership with the government, or they can still think of becoming independent, so they can still think of becoming profitable by becoming an independent platform where they raise unbiased opinions and do not run such algorithms through which they are benefiting certain sections of society.
I mean, sort of when you talk about media houses and social media, they're completely different aspects that you look at. It's not the same in any close. Where in one place, the information is being given to you is probably vetted to some extent. Definitely, it's media at the end of the day. It shows you what you want to see. But again, the power of social media has taken over the power of traditional media today, with a
Mhm.
lot more people engaging on social media. So media houses are already being regulated. They have some norms in place. Now the question is, how do you regulate social media? It is difficult to do. When you say to not use certain algorithms or to use certain algorithms, there'll be 1,000 explanations that can be given to you saying that it is correct or it is not correct, right?
Hmm.
But how do you know whether it is correct or not? That's the question. whether you will be able to vet it or whether you'll not be able to vet it.
Absolutely.
And
And
I
I
think
think
that's one of the things that will always be in discussion.
that's true. That's true. And I think that's something which our audience can also think upon as to what they think is important in this case, and how social media is going to play an important role in the coming times, and how these kind of outages, crashes can be avoided by top companies is something which these companies and firms can look at, so that they can avoid getting into news for these kind of things, because I'm sure that Mark Zuckerberg would not be happy to see what happened on Tuesday last week. And we are quite sure that this is not going to happen again. But again, we're living in a world where technical glitches happen. Even if I'm on a UGP show running a live podcast and my internet fails on one side, it disrupts the live show, isn't it? So that's what happens
Absolutely.
with these technical glitches. Anyways, thank you so much, Shivam, for today, and I hope to see you again in some other discussion.
Absolutely. Always a pleasure.
Thank you.